Can you guys hear? You can hear, Russell? Oh.
I can hear you.
I can hear the folks on this call, but not the main work.
Can you talk now? Oh.
They can't hear. That's a Louise fixed text.
One more time? Oh.
All right, can folks hear me online? Super echoey.
Don't see anyone nodding.
Just confirming we can hear now, but agree it is pretty echoey.
Yeah, you probably have a second microphone somewhere.
Mine on. Maybe that was it.
Is everyone like locked at their desks?
Yeah.
Yep.
I think it's better now. Should-
I could just try to keep it muted.
All right, let me try mine. Can anyone hear me on mine?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hear me?
Looks like you're sharing.
Looks like I'm up. Still a bit of an echo. There's no mics on here, right? So we push ahead.
We'll be brief.
All right. So the next thing on the agenda is a brief overview of why the working group was formed. So I thought I would just read from Special Act 2610 what our charge is. It's actually very short. It's a single sentence. So it's a second sentence in section 1A. So the first sentence says there's established a working group within the legislative branch for the creation of a searchable database that is capable of receiving, organizing, and storing data associated with the sales and use of pesticides that the Commissioner of D may require pursuant to 441 General Statutes. The second sentence is really what we need to do. And it says, in undertaking such examination, such working group shall review the searchable pesticide databases of not less than 2 other states, including but not limited to reviewing the cost of creating, licensing, and maintaining such database, and the cost associated with complying with the use of such database for any applicator, farmer, retailer, or other person who reports any such sales or use in the information, and learning the parameters, use, outcome, and end users of such database, including but not limited to security, providing information, issues related to the use of such database. And so that's it. So I think we can discuss what we really want to do a little more in section 2 coming up, but I just wanted to read what the actual charge was so we all kind of start at the same place.
All right. Thank you so much, Representative Jensen. We are going to move to our introductions by the members of the Pesticide Working Group. We will start with Brent. Do we have Brent here? No? Okay. Moving on to Alex.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for everything. I'm Alex Duffy. I'm the director for the Regulatory Services Bureau within the Connecticut Department of Agriculture.
Thank you, Alex. Stephen Bennett.
Good morning. I'm Steve Bennett with the Household and Commercial Products Association. We represent companies that sell home pesticides, antimicrobials, and home pesticides used in the home. Thank you.
That's why you're getting echo. So I should mute. Let me try.
You're muted.
So I'll unmute and we'll deal with the echo.
Jesse. Okay. Oh, perfect. Thank you. Jesse, you can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sorry about that. I'm in a bad area of service. I reside in Middletown, Connecticut.
Thank you, Jesse. Russell?
Hi, I'm Russell Holmberg from Holmberg Orchards. I'm a fourth generation fruit grower from southeastern Connecticut. We have a kind of forward facing farm. We sell direct to consumer tree fruits, pick your own crops, things like that.
Thank you so much. Emily?
Hey, everyone.
Oh, you got muted, Emily.
Thanks. I'm Emily May, Agricultural Conservation Lead with the Pesticide Program at the Xerces Society for Invertebrate Conservation. I'm a conservation biologist and work to understand how pesticides impact invertebrates.
Thank you, Emily. Louise?
Hi, I'm Louise Washer. I am president of the Norwalk River Watershed Association, and I'm on the board of the Pollinator Pathway. My work involves protecting water quality, aquatic life, and pollinators. My perspective is kind of twofold. I engage with the public a lot on these issues, so I hear from people about their concerns. And I've also been watching the Norwalk River for the last 20 years. It's an important river in Connecticut because we really have more data on water quality on that river than any other river, I believe, in the state. The USGS tests that river monthly for pesticides. DEEP has also tested it for macroinvertebrate life. So we just have lots of information, and I'm here with that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Rob?
Hi, I'm Robert Prince. I'm the policy director for the National Wildlife Society's Connecticut office. I'm here primarily for worrying about or concerned about issues related to pesticides and bird health, as well as all wildlife. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob. Bruce?
Bruce Reddick Farms in New Hartford, Connecticut, and we are a greenhouse grower and a vegetable grower. We grow about 100.
I'm able to hear through the microphone.
All right. For those online, we have someone looking at the IT issues. We'll be back in a minute.
So when it's here, 1, 2. Ooh, look at that.
Yeah,
1, 2.
I turned on my mic again. Right.
Do you need to hear your voice?
I don't think so. I think everyone can hear us. We'll speak up.
Two, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Talk again.
All right. No. All right. It's unmuted. I think the echo is a little better. All right. Test 1, 2. There's an optimist.
We're gonna see if we can move to another room that won't have this echo because it's an IT issue.
Okay.
Oh, that was real hard. Terrible. You're having an echo here.
Yeah, it's just really awkward. All right, I am gonna put the Zoom up, but I will keep it muted. Strong start.
So we're pretty first about a lot of oil types and plant types, so we're pretty much we're in such a wide range of environments, we're kind of like head and we're in fully range. I have some like 40 plus. This year, not know what the plus is real good, but the we're gonna have an offsetting time. Prior to that.
Checking that folks can hear us online. Not online. Okay, no worries.
Check, 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 check.
We're good?
Yeah, it's just not recording right away.
So we're just not, we're waiting for the computer to load so that we can record what people say. It's gonna take a minute, sorry.
This is your first meeting?
Of the summer.
Oh, okay.
I never had this issue during session. So, first time doing this.
All right, we are back. Can folks hear us online? Okay, excellent. Again, I am State Representative Lori Sweet. I'm here with Representative Jensen. We are co-chairs of this pesticide modernization working group, and we are going to continue with introductions of members of this working group. Next up is Kim.
I'm Kim Stoner. I am the Director of Advocacy for Connecticut NOFA, the Northeast Organic Farming Association of Connecticut, and I am a retired scientist from the Connecticut Agricultural Experiment Station.
Thank you so much, Kim. David?
David Golombeski, a lifelong resident of New Milford. I'm a golf course superintendent at Newtown Country Club, and I'm the government relations chair for the Connecticut Association of Golf Course Superintendents.
Thank you so much. We have two additional members. Dylan? Is Dylan here today?
Yes, I'm online. Dylan Gabbert. I'm the Director of State Regulatory Affairs with RISE and CropLife America. Those are the industry associations for non-ag and agricultural pesticide manufacturers, producers, distributors, respectively. Thank you.
Thank you. And lastly, Joan?
Hi, good morning. My name is Joan Sagan, and I am an environmental scientist. I have my master's in environmental science, and I currently work on the Town of Greenwich Shellfish Commission.
Thank you so much. So before we get into a discussion and a presentation, I just want to let you know some of the objectives of this group. So today we're just trying to get to know one another and understand our different roles and experiences. And, oh, I'm sorry. I missed Jessie.
Jess Brandt, right?
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. I'm not technically a member of the working group, so maybe that's why. Hi, I'm Jess Brandt. I'm Associate Director of Connecticut Sea Grant.
Thank you so much. So today we're trying to do introductions. We are trying to establish an understanding of the purpose and the goals of this working group. We're going to discuss issues and concerns that were raised during the public hearing and identify areas that may warrant further review. We're going to begin by identifying priorities and questions, challenges, and opportunities for the group to explore. We're going to discuss how the group should carry out its work and how we should keep ourselves organized. And then finally, we're going to agree on our next steps and establish a schedule for future meetings. Our next agenda item is our working group purpose, scope, and expectations. We're going to have a brief discussion led by Representative Jensen.
Hello, is this working? All right, good. So I read the special act kind of as a way of introduction, and if I was to summarize it, what I would say is the working group was created to determine whether Connecticut's pesticide regulatory system can be made more modern, efficient, transparent, and data-driven while protecting public health, the environment, agricultural interests, and sensitive information. So I think that kind of summarizes everything that we want to try to accomplish here, right? So, you know, in practical terms, what does it mean? You know, we should look at where we are, evaluate the current system, all right, identify gaps in it, what we might want to add, changes we'd like to see in it. Look at modern technology. My understanding is our current system isn't very modern, and what that can bring to the table for us. And eventually develop recommendations for a system that could provide better information, accountability, without creating unnecessary regulatory or administrative burdens. All right. And again, we've been tasked to specifically look at 2 states' systems. So that's kind of my take on it. So I will turn it over to comments from anyone else. add to what they see the scope and, no? All right. You have anything to add, Representative?
Does anybody have any comments? Please.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say it, it's pretty clear that what it says, and, beyond that, isn't, try to keep it limited. I've been on a lot of groups and stuff, and it can get crazy, so.
All right.
Keep that in mind.
Keep it focused, yes.
Yeah, we have a very limited scope and we have a limited amount of time to produce a report before session starts in January. So I think it is, as both of you pointed out, very important that we keep focus on modernization, costs, how that database is going to function, and are there other models from other states that we can use so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Our clerk, Luna, has prepared a PowerPoint on what we heard during the public hearing. So we're going to shift to kind of figure out what we've heard, kind of the different sides of the issue. And I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but we will be having a research presentation coming up at our next meeting by OLR. But this is just a presentation on what we heard during the public hearing.
So maybe just some background. So Ray's Bill 5155 was to actually create this database, all right? And that did not move out of committee. It moved out as this study, all right? So we went from actually creating the database, but the public hearing was on the creation of the database, all right? So it's pertinent to what we're looking at here today.
Thank you so much. If you could advance us to the first slide. So the purpose of today's discussion, we're going to talk about what we heard, what Deep raised, and what the group can decide. So we heard support for more accessible, detailed pesticide use data, but also concerns about privacy, burden, cost, and interpretation. Deep raised supports for electronic collection and reporting in concept, and questions about breadth, reliability, privacy, cost, and enforcement. And what this group can decide is what actual data is needed, who reports it, and who can access it, and how to make the system useful, fair, and sustainable. So what problem is modernization trying to solve? The testimony described current information as difficult to search, aggregate, and analyze. Supporters emphasize gaps in location-specific information, especially for commercial applications. Several witnesses said pesticide-treated seed information is not adequately captured. Opponents stressed that licensed applicators already maintain records and submit required reports. And so a shared question is, can Connecticut improve usability of existing information without creating unnecessary duplication? What information could a modernized system capture? So what? That's the product, active ingredient, how much, the quantity sold or applied, where, the specific geographic location, when, the date and frequency, and who, the reporter, the applicator, or the distributor. So the core design question is, which elements are necessary for oversight, research, and transparency, and at what level of detail? So question one is, how specific should location information be? Why supporters want location data? That's to connect use with water quality monitoring, identify potential hotspots and cumulative watershed impacts, support exposure and epidemiological research. My background is art history, not science. Informed testing, enforcement, and policy. Some concerns about exact locations, the private property and customer confidentiality, the potential exposure of customer lists or farm operations, competitive proprietary business information, and the risk of targeting or misinformation. So some options raised are maybe the parcel or address, census tract, town, county, watershed, or aggregated or anonymized data. And why supporters say more detail matters. So for water and the ecosystem, our rivers, our groundwater, our reservoirs, and Long Island Sound, we can compare use patterns with environmental monitoring, impacts on aquatic organisms, wildlife, and pollinators. From a public health and research perspective, we can access potential community exposures, support maternal child, and that word again, research, track use trends over time and identify areas for further study. For transparency purposes, this could make records easier to search. It could give us better evidence, policymakers, and potentially increase public access to information about pesticide use. The research value that was highlighted in testimony, researchers cited California's pesticide use reporting data as valuable for tracking trends and estimating nearby exposure. Testimony referenced New York as an example of public pesticide use information informing local policy. Supporters argued that searchable historical data can help connect pesticide use patterns with environmental and health outcomes. The working group opportunity here is to examine what other states collect, how they protect this data, and what the information is actually used for. Question 2, how should pesticide-treated seeds be addressed? So the supportive testimony noted that treated seeds represent a significant data gap. Tracking distribution could improve the understanding of pesticide use, and some testimony suggested reporting by distributors rather than farmers. Some of the concerns raised around this question: how are we defining precisely what counts as pesticide-treated seed? Can we avoid duplicative requirements? Distribution may not equal environmental exposure, and raw data may omit context about treatment type, rate, and exposure pathway. DEEP's perspective that we heard from Commissioner Dykes. DEEP supports electronic data collection and reporting. Modern technology could improve knowledge of where, what, and how much pesticide is used. Some implementation concerns are the breadth of the data, incomplete or unreliable data, potential misuse, responsibility for another agency's data, and privacy on private property. Resources. Proposed funding may be insufficient. Historical digitization is significant. Ongoing maintenance will cost money. That's part of our charge to figure out how much this might cost. And expanded reporting may increase enforcement needs. Question 3, what's the reporting burden? Farmers, landscapers, golf courses, greenhouse growers, and applicators described limited administrative capacity. Concerns included new software, staff time, training, data entry, and compliance oversight. Several witnesses argued existing FIFRA state records should be modernized rather than duplicated. Small and family-run operations said fixed compliant costs could affect them disproportionately. And the design question is, can data be submitted once and then reused across regulatory needs? Question 4 is around privacy, confidentiality, and proprietary information. So for the customer or the property owner, the exact address may reveal who receives pest control or lawn care services, and testimony raised sensitive residential treatment scenarios. In terms of business information, customer lists may be indirectly exposed. Product selection, timing, rates, and treatment programs may have competitive value. So some potential design responses would be to aggregate or anonymize public data, separate agency level out from public access, define confidential fields, and potentially apply cybersecurity and access controls. How do we make the data meaningful? Question 5. A recurring concern is that pesticide use data does not necessarily equal pesticide risk without context. So some of these factors are application method or pest pressure, regulatory status, application rate, IPM practices, exposure pathways, weather, product characteristics, and degradation. So should a public database provide raw records alone or pair them with definitions, context, and explanatory tools? Question 6, who should report? Potential reporters are commercial applicators and supervisors, farmers, dealers, retailers, seed distributors. There's an equity concern. Licensed professionals may face detailed reporting, while homeowner retail use remains largely outside of this system. Would that produce an incomplete picture of total pesticide use? So the design goal here would be to assign responsibility where data already exists. Again, avoiding duplicate entries, clarifying the scope and the frequency, and also to be considering reporting thresholds. Question 7, this is also something we're tasked with, is what is this going to cost? For the reporting entities, that's software, new integration, that's labor and training, compliance oversight. For DEEP, that's database development, data management and staffing, and also enforcement capacity. For a statewide system, that's cybersecurity, maintenance and upgrades, and historical digitization. Both DEEP and multiple opposing witnesses questioned whether the proposed $100,000 appropriations would be sufficient. And where can we find potential common ground? We are trying to modernize an outdated technology, reduce duplicative reporting, protect environment and public health, and provide adequate funding. We want to set this up to be successful. But we also want to improve DEEP's ability to manage records, improve data quality and usability, protect the private, confidential information, and include affected stakeholders in our system design. A possible tiered data access model with DEEP and state agencies having the most detailed records for oversight, enforcement, analysis, researchers, authorized users, potential access to more detailed data under safeguards, and a public database that is searchable with privacy and confidentiality protections. From testimony to system design, we need to define the data gap, assign reporting responsibility, select minimum data elements, establish access and privacy rules, set geographic precision, estimate costs and resources, add context/metadata, pilot, evaluate, and refine. So what should this system look like? What is the information that is essential to collect? What should be public? What should be restricted? How can we minimize duplicating reporting information? What resources will DEEP and reporting entities need? How precise should the location be? Who should report application sales and treated seeds? What context is needed so that the data is interpreted responsibly? And how should we measure success? So just a note on what is in this slide deck. These are points that were made that our clerk has summarized. There are supportive perspectives, and those are listed here. There are opposing concerns and perspectives, and there is the agency perspective. And I believe you tried to represent all of those perspectives in here. We might have missed some, but that's what the working group is here for. Okay. And just a note, this slide deck will be shareable so that folks can digest it a little bit more than me rapidly reading it. All right, we are going to have an initial discussion for the next 20 minutes or so on what this group should focus on. So what is the most important area or areas for us to examine? Just throwing out some questions for you to consider. What processes or practices should we better understand? What are some challenges or concerns? What are the opportunities for modernization that we should be exploring? What issues could have the greatest impact on pesticide program modernization? What information or data do we need to have before we make any recommendations? And what can we learn from other states?
So maybe I'll kick this one off. All right. So in my opinion, I think the first thing we need to understand is where we are. All right. So what are the current practices that are in the state? What are we doing now? What's good? What's bad about it? All right. So I would like to request that the OLR put together a report for our next meeting that summarizes where we are today. And as I said, strengths, weaknesses, yeah, so that would kind of be our starting point, all right? So anyone have any comments on that as a first step? Makes sense? All right. So then the second point that I have is we have specifically been charged with choosing 2 states to focus on, 2 or more, all right? So the next question is, how do we choose those, all right? A quick search of the internet, I have found California has a very extensive system. New York and Massachusetts have systems that I think are similar to what we have kind of been charged with. And then there's about 5 other states that really are more about product registration, if I could summarize, all right? But again, I would like the OLR to put together a summary of all of these for us, right? Something that we can look at our next meeting, go through each state, you know, and decide which ones we want to focus our attention on for this work. All right? Does that all make sense too? Yep. Yeah. Please.
I guess I'm a hands-on kind of person. In addition to an OLR report, it might be useful to have links to those systems so that we could play with them.
Good.
Fake register, maybe a demo.
I would just like to throw in just it probably might be too early to interject this. Just from our growers' perspective, we're kind of in a state where agriculture is the term I'm looking at from. I can't begin to understand what other businesses go through, but we are not in a very competitive area. We currently we have a lot of disadvantages. So when it comes to burden, that's our primary concern. And regionally, we don't really compete with farms from California. We don't compete with farms from Texas. We do compete with farms from Massachusetts and New York. So from our perspective, we want to be doing what people we directly compete with. We're fine to do it with what they might have to do with, but we don't want to have to go beyond because of just the costs of dealing with that could make us be an unfair competitive advantage to our rival states.
So that kind of falls under the cost of input is what I've summarized it as. Yeah.
Rep Jensen, I have something I would like to add real quick.
Please.
So Alex Duffy, Connecticut Department of Ag. I would encourage everyone to look at states with similar agricultural levels to what we have. In big states like California and New York, they have really, much larger, much more commercial. We're much smaller operations, and I think I want to echo what the previous gentleman said. We want to make sure that we're not overburdening our producers, especially on the smaller scale. So I think when we look at what other states to compare to, it's important to look at scale, because if you go out to California, and I used to work, I did a little work out there. Those are large operations with, big teams farming a lot of acres for, grocery store type. We're much more local in Connecticut. So I just want to make sure that we're comparing, our production systems to, at a scale that is reasonable for our producers. Thank you.
Could I also make a suggestion? Louise Washer from North River Watershed Association. Just as a member of the public that has tried to use our current system, I think it might be useful for everybody to just have an understanding of what our current system, how it works, what you're able to search. That might be a good starting place.
That was my first point, right? Is the current system, is an understanding of it. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I missed that.
Yeah,
Sorry.
no, okay.
So I'm Kim Stoner. I looked around at some at the California and the New York database systems, and also looked a little bit at research drawing on those systems. And so a few things I would like to point out is, if you don't collect the data with the level of information that you're ultimately going to want, you're never going to have it. So, for example, there were studies looking at groundwater, for example, in New York, and it was difficult to locate exactly where the pesticides had been applied. So in New York, they have a system where the public information, as was kind of described on the slide, the public information is compiled and anonymized, but the public health researchers could apply to get more detailed information. So if you collect more detailed information, then that is available over history for research that you're not going to be able to get if you don't collect that information in the first place. That's one point I wanted to make. Another point I wanted to make is, I am not sure that New York is collecting data about treated seeds. And so if people want to have the data about treated seeds, we might have to think about how one actually does that, because I'm not sure that that's really difficult to capture. I think the farmers don't necessarily know what has been applied to their seed, and it's a real complicated question, actually, about treated seeds. Thanks.
This is Emily May from Xerces Society, and I just wanted to chime in on that point, which is there is another state in Northeast Vermont that is reports pesticide use at the county level by type, and Vermont also collects information on treated seeds from seed distributors and dealers, and not from farmers. So there is a person in the Agency of Ag in Vermont that can speak to that process of data collection, Jill Goss. And yeah, it is complicated, but I think the more states that begin to look at the process of doing so will hopefully make it easier on all the other states doing that. I also did want to say we put together a presentation for DEP in the process of looking at this bill, and it included some slides on what the current system does collect from different types of applicators. And it sounds like that's what we're going to hear from OLR next time, but I am happy to pull that up and present if that's helpful at this point.
And this is Dylan Gabbert, and I just also want to point out here too, where we're talking about the level of data, and certainly, you know, the questions we're trying to answer. I think it might be pertinent to really think about what that base level of information we might need is, given, you know, there's certainly a lot of data that we can collect. But if we're really just trying to answer a single question, really trying to really understand what that minimum amount of data would be to answer that question, because additional data is really not going to contribute to an additional answer, right? You can get a baseline answer with a minimal amount of data. So it's just trying to understand what's the question, and then therefore coming up with an appropriate answer and solution there.
If I could add to the thought to that, though, if you are only looking at one question, you're never going to be able to answer other questions. Looking at the data, that people have used in California and New York, there are lots of different kinds of questions that that researchers have used those databases for. California is really sort of the gold standard in the world, I think, for pesticide data. And so there's been a tremendous amount of research, not just current research, but also historical research that's looked at, like epidemiological data about exposures of children and following them through their lives. So there are lots of different kinds of questions if you collect the data that you can have. But if so to think that we're just only trying to answer one question, I think is not what I would want to see.
Yeah, I would agree to that. And, to build on it a little bit, I see this working group as kind of unique, and that is typically a working group would be given, what are we trying to do, what question are we trying to answer, what problem are we trying to solve, given something, fairly narrow, right, that they should focus on. Part of our charge is to actually say what the use will be, all right? So we actually not only have to come up with the database, but how it's going to be used. We aren't given the use, as part of our, as part of the charge going in, which I think is maybe somewhat different than other working groups, right? Yeah. So that's part of looking at how these other ones are being used, right? And what uses we would like to see in our state, I think.
I think that something to consider is, like we said, I mean, some type of, if we are going to move forward with something, I think it has to be on an aggregate level to some degree, whether it's by town or county or however it may be. I don't know that you get, getting site specific. I think that's a little, maybe a little bit of a slippery slope. But then at the same time, I think, and this was in the presentation earlier, one big thing that I think that really needs to be kept in mind is, all right, as a supervisory pesticide applicator, yeah, I have to file my annual report and whatever, which I do. But then there's a lot of products that I use that are, you can go buy at Home Depot, Lowe's, Tractor Supply, what have you, and none of that use that, John Doe homeowner is using, none of that use is captured at all type of thing. And, the people in my industry and other industries, we're educated users of materials, and we have an advantage, we have budgets to stick with and such, so it's, we're not going to use more than we need to use, where, I can't speak for every homeowner, but, they may say, oh, I'll just put 3 times the amount down, and, I don't want any, make sure I don't have any crabgrass or whatever, and that's where, just think, yeah, you can collect the data from, certified applicators, but once, there's this whole other group of homeowners, like I say, I'm not sure. That's why I say I think it has to be aggregate-wise data to some degree.
I would echo that point to a degree, and throw in a couple other things in regards to, like, just mentioning, like, how you aggregate data. there's a proprietary concern when it comes to like farms. So for instance, I'm literally it for a sweet corn grower in New Hartford, Connecticut. So if you're able to search and see who's using what in New Hartford, Connecticut, I'm not, this isn't just really me speaking. I'm an open book. If you know me, I speak at lots of things to other growers. I believe that we're kind of all on the same team. But if I had some method of growing sweet corn that was confidential and then I have to report it as the only person growing it in New Hartford, Connecticut, that somebody would be able to figure out, oh, that's what he's doing. And it's too easy to identify, so that's a concern. Then going to the homeowner thing, I just want to echo that point, just when it always comes to this, as somebody who takes this stuff extremely seriously, and really the only applicator on my farm. I don't really like applicating stuff, but we follow what's called integrated pest management, and it's like a last resort type of thing when is our goal. And I've seen some homeowners, including people I rent land from, do things that it's just like, wait, what? You did what? And and just witnessing them just playing, it's like spraying pure concentrate on something that's not getting reported. It's just like, and that has always concerned me, just as a citizen and a grower. And I don't know how that gets captured. I don't know if there's really any way to combat that. But that just as somebody, I have deep caring for the environment, because we need it so I can grow stuff. And seeing people act irresponsibly because they don't know anything is terrifying.
Hi, this is Joan Sagan, and I just wanted to mention that I have looked around at the California, the Massachusetts, and the New York State databases, and I do want to let you know that New York State has they have YouTube videos showing you how they electronically upload their data which are very helpful. I'm not exactly sure how old that electronic process is that they've been requiring, but with the advances in technology, it would be much more simplified. So keep that in mind when you are taking a peek at these database uploading systems. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that for all three states, the data that's required by the pesticide applicator is much more detailed than what the public is allowed to access. And that goes for all three states.
This is Russell Holmberg. I want to echo the two concerns we had about the who, and I was kind of saving my comments for when we talk about the who is responsible, because homeowners have come up, but it's not just homeowners, it's also farmers. There's a whole class of applicators out there that are not applying restricted use pesticides, so they can be a farmer without a pesticide license who are still legally and safely applying pesticides to their farm. That are they going to be accountable? So I have that concern. I would say it for the who. I would say if we're preparing a background report for next meeting, sure, we can look at the latest and the greatest, but the growers that I associate with, we all kind of group ourselves in the New England states. I think a slide in that slide deck should be what Connecticut is requesting and reporting compared to the other New England states. If we're preparing background, I think that's a good frame of reference. If we're looking at the latest and the greatest, let's just see what our closest competitors are doing too.
Yeah, hi, it's Steve Bennett. I think another thing is, look at going back to the conversation about talking about homeowners and retail. I think it'd be good to put a context in this report as well around, where do the percentage of where the products are, what's currently collected around commercial versus at home versus agriculture versus retail. So we have a good perspective of where they're coming in, and potential where other what the other states are collecting, what information, if they break those down by those different markets as well, so we can have a good, informed perspective on this whole picture.
All right, thank you. Yeah, this is something that I saw in some of the public commentary, and it really goes down to general use versus restricted use pesticides, right? Do we want to restrict it to restricted use, all right, which is certified applicators, or do we want to try to include general use? That would really open it up to a lot more data, let's say, right? And that's everything that's sold at Lowe's, right? And then I don't see any realistic way to know where it would be applied, although you could assume, like, you know, the town it's sold in is going to be fairly close, right? People aren't going to travel across the state to buy a bag of fertilizer. But yeah, that's certainly an issue we need to decide, right? Yeah.
And this is Dylan Gabbert once again. I think that to that point, and I think as we're you know, discussing sort of, you know, the level and sort of the question that we're trying to answer in that same vein, you know, cost is really going to be a big driver, I think, to a lot of this. So certainly a cost of going towards a, you know, a registration system for general use pesticides is going to be significantly more expensive, not only to run, but then also to enforce against. So just kind of thinking about the long-term activities there, where if that were a direction, I think that you know, you know, if we were to stick to one use case or another, I think restricted use would probably be a little bit more appropriate.
All right, so I had another idea that we could try to do. All right, now that this isn't in the formal charge that we got on the special act, but would we like to put together what I would call an ideal database? All right, so could we get input from each person on the working group on what they'd like to see in the database, and put that together and say, this is what an ideal database would look like. So now let's compare that to Michigan or New York or California. Does it cover everything? Right? Does Michigan have 90%? Does California have a lot of stuff we may not even want? Right? I don't know. It was an idea that I had. You know, I'd put it up for discussion if you think there's value in it. Any comments?
I think that's a good idea.
I don't necessarily naysay it. I'm not particularly an end user of a database. I'm a person supplying the data, so that's the kind of the aspect I put it in. As a person who currently reports my restricted use pesticides every year that I apply, the current system is archaic. You know, I'm willing to admit that it's kind of a weird way we have to do it. I'd be happy to see some sort of modernization and at least how we can enter data. Like, at least I haven't found a great way to do it. It's one of my least favorite couple days a year where I convert my records over to match their stuff that the DEP currently wants from us. But outside of that, like, I do have a little bit of apprehension at just, like, you know, I don't think we need to reinvent a wheel. Like, we're a small state, at least speaking from our agricultural producer side, and like, I don't know, it feels like a big thing for a very small state. Would be the way I would describe it. Industry, like from our industry's perspective, that would be my main comment. I'm trying to like come up with something rather than just see what somebody else has. I'm not against seeing what somebody else has and looking at ways to improve it. That's what most of the best inventions we have are. You know, but like, it's just, you know, I don't know. Like I said, I'm not an end user, so I get a little lost on that side of it.
But I think you have a unique perspective for those of us that don't use the system. When we come back and we reconvene in a month or so, we'd love to hear what is archaic about it, and right, like how to modernize it, because, you know, we're the lawmakers. We want to make it better for you.
All right, so should we proceed with that? Should we ask every member of the working group to send in to OLR what they would like to see in a database, and they would or not see? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and they could put that together again for next week and next meeting, so we can have a look at what we would call an ideal database, and I'm sure some ideas will conflict with each other, right? And see if there could be workarounds, things like that. Yeah.
I think it might be useful to get more familiar with what existing databases in other states do before we do that exercise.
So let's wait then. Okay. I'm good with that. Yep.
I think that's a good idea. Yeah.
So was our homework to try to access the current database and also maybe look at some other ones just to kind of familiarize ourselves with what's out there, maybe?
Look at the YouTube videos from New York, right? Yep.
I don't want to jump the gun, but I did want to offer again that I have these couple of slides on what exists today in the Connecticut database if we wanted to proceed with looking at that now.
Yeah,
If that's helpful.
yeah.
Okay. All right. Let me see if I can get that shared. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'll go through just sort of what the reporting looks like for private applicators and for commercial applicators. So in the Connecticut system, through e-license, you've got these annual reports submitted by licensed applicators. This is an example of the restricted use pesticide reporting from a private applicator. So it's published on the website, DEEP's website, with often handwritten reports, inconsistently formatted, published in PDF or image format, including people's names and addresses. So the current system is not particularly well privatized or aggregated, and it's also not searchable or useful. So it is, I'll echo the commenter that called it a little archaic, right? What can we do to make this better? So the reporting requirements do differ by the type of applicator. So for private applicators, these are annual summary reports that include amounts applied, locations, and dates of restricted use pesticide applications. General use pesticide applications are not reported for farms. For commercial applicators, annual summary reports include the total amount of both general use and restricted use pesticides, but they're not tied to locations and dates of application. These are tied to a business address of the commercial applicator. So we don't know where those pesticides are being used. So that I just wanted to provide that as sort of background information as we move through the process. The original sort of proposal through this bill was to make that existing data usable, not going back to historical reports, but to create a searchable database using the data that DEEP is already collecting and then aggregating it and anonymizing it. And we had some discussions with folks at Connecticut Ag Experiment Station and others talking about like what's the sweet spot for that location to be able to make it useful for research purposes, but also anonymized appropriately. And I think the sweet spot we kind of talked about was county level. We've already discussed in this group about if you're a sweet corn grower and you're the only sweet corn grower in this town, it's going to be obvious looking at a town level or like a parcel level where that pesticide application was being made. Same like if you're the only golf course in a town, if we go at the town level, that is also going to be pretty obvious to figure out. But in Connecticut, we're a small state. If we're reporting use at the county level, that is still more useful than having it at the state level, but more anonymized than having it at the town or a lower level. So that's sort of where we were. I just wanted to provide that overview. So the proposed, if we were to go at county level, It's actually less detailed reporting for private applicators, provided that it's remaining restricted use pesticides. The additional reporting burden would probably come for commercial applicators that are operating in multiple counties, where they would need to separate out their reporting by county. And just to, I think, zoom forward to one of the states, Massachusetts has this really simple kind of drop-down menu entry form that they developed. You basically put in your EPA registration number, you select a product, and then you add the volume applied and major sort of crop or site treated. And so I think the addition, if we were to go with something like this and do it at the county level, there could be another drop down for where this was applied. So I think I'll stop there. But I just, the main improvement is just that the current publicly available reports do include names and addresses. For private applicators, it's quite a bit more information. And so I think the idea of modernizing is both to make it more useful, but also to make it more private. I'll stop. Thanks very much.
I'd just like to introduce a comment on anonymity. I'm not familiar with what the rules are, but I know there are straightforward rules in economic data that relate to scale and the number of entities in a given category within a given geography. So if there's fewer than 3 or fewer than 5 sweet corn growers in a municipality, if that's the scale that's being used, then that data is not reported. It's, again, I'm not an economist, but I know that there are broadly used rules in reporting economic data with regards to anonymity.
And I think that aligns sort of with my perspective would be as well. I mean, there may be a limited number of growers in a county, but there also may be even further limited number of retailers and distributors in the county. So if we're talking about potential sales of a pesticide or use of a pesticide, that could potentially lead to confidential business information effectively being leaked and other potential competitive advantage that would be certainly something that we wouldn't necessarily want to see either. So trying to find that right level or appropriate level where you're getting the information that's obviously supportive and necessary, but without leaking some of these competitive conversations, I think would be helpful as well.
And I would just like to add that I think it would be helpful to have most of this data reported, but just not accessible to the public. But I do think that, as echoing what Kim Stoner said, that it is important to collect the information if it's ever necessary, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be available to the public. And the output of the data that maybe the public or researchers are looking for can be aggregated at the state level for those smaller farmers, and at the county level for something that's a little bit more widespread.
I'm just going to offer a perspective. This might be at the wrong time, but it just kind of hit me looking at the presentation of what's been reported and the shortcomings. It's been said, oh, our system's so antiquated and outdated and everything else. I run a retail farm. We put thousands of people through our farm on a weekend day. And I field the question about pesticides. What are you spraying? When? How much? So I know what people are asking for. It's not anything on that list. I can tell you that right now. I have never had a person ask a specific question about a restricted use pesticide ever. And I'll ask them, is there a specific product you're asking about? And the answer is glyphosate or Roundup. And that's about it. So I just for a little bit of perspective, yes, I mean, I would support reporting restricted use. But my interactions with the greater public, the database that we have is not going to answer the questions that they're asking.
I think the goal, though, for aggregating the data and for collecting it, detailed data, is to have it available to scientific researchers. I mean, the public is sort of a separate issue, but I think it's important to have the data that scientists might need for planning future policy and understanding what's going on, and then what the public needs, I think, is different.
My concern would be that as borne out over the last couple of years, the public's ability to translate scientific data into actionable items can be, to say the least, a challenge. And if we're publishing scientific data that the public can access, the number of ways that can go sideways, especially for a retail-facing farm like my own, is concerning.
I also think that there are public concerns that are just growing now, and there are reasons, because we do have enough science to know where pesticides are showing up in the environment. So knowing that we have a modern system, knowing that we're collecting data that, the agricultural experiment station, Kim, you can help me, but the analysts there that are looking at, what crops are becoming resistant to certain, pesticides, and maybe we cut back on them. I mean, the ability to make smart policy going forward, I think that could be a message for the public. We're making these changes. We're really going to be making sound decisions to both protect, farmers and what they need, and also the public. I think the public needs some transparency and needs to know we're working on this issue, and that might help people calm down about glyphosate and really be able to look at larger issues and how the state's handling them. That's my hope, anyway.
One of the things people mentioned about context, and several of the people here have mentioned about context too, is about integrated pest management. And so I think that's part of what Louise is referring to, is having a sense that the work that the experiment station is doing, the work that UConn is doing, how does that relate to what pesticides people are applying? And then that's kind of, I think, a message for the public. And then the researchers, it's really very useful to know quite specifically what farmers are applying with respect to which crops and potentially which pests, but that would be a lot to report, in order to understand more about questions about, like, resistance of pathogens and pests to pesticides.
And where resistance has been brought up a couple times too, I certainly agree with IPM, and certainly using the best tool in the toolbox to address the growers' concerns or the professional end users' concerns for a particular pest. And so really wanting to ensure that the data that's collected still allows the end user to make those appropriate decisions, because there may be a tool that is necessary to solve a certain problem due to resistance and due to other concerns. So ensuring that they still have the autonomy to make those decisions under IPM to choose the best tool in their toolbox, whether it's a pesticide or another agriculture activity.
Well, this is just about reporting. This is not really about changing what the growers can choose.
I think if there is some degree that you're going to say certain data is available only to researchers, I think we really need to define, who are we calling a researcher? Is it just, university ag experiment station level people, or is it, group X is doing, this research and they've hired, consultant Y, are they allowed to see it, or is it kept pretty stringent on who gets their hands on it type of thing?
Thank you all for that discussion. We were definitely taking notes, and you brought up a lot of very, very good points for us as a group to consider. Before we move to our last item, action item, we just wanted to briefly discuss how we should go about organizing this work. We are scheduled to meet about once a month and through December. Hopefully having a report by the time session starts in January, but we are open to hearing other folks' ideas. Do you think smaller subgroups might be needed? Do you think that once a month is not enough? And maybe once we get going after the OLR presentation in September, we might need to meet more frequently. We will be hearing that presentation about research in other states. Yes, so I will open it up to that before I tell you when we're meeting again and kind of wrap up our first working group today. So I'll open the floor for comments, questions.
I have a question about that. Do you envision that we would have like guest speakers come in, like maybe somebody from Massachusetts to talk about issues? Because in that case, we might need more meetings or not.
That would be great, and that's up to us to determine. If you have contacts with somebody in Massachusetts or elsewhere and you would like to invite them to come and present, we are absolutely open to that. The more information that we can gather so that we can make the best proposal possible, that's really the goal.
Okay, thanks. So if we have ideas like that, we should just send them to you? Okay.
I think wait and hear the presentation next month and then see where that leads us type of thing.
Yeah, I kind of, that's my thought. It's just, once we have more information as far as what surrounding states do and stuff, and the presentation will be very helpful to kind of figure out what we have before us at this moment. It's kind of like, there's a lot, but at the same time, it's not, so.
I think we can wrap up. We are going to be meeting, I believe it's a Monday, September 14th, back here to hear a presentation from our partners at OLR about our current database and what other states are doing. Our clerk, Luna, is going to be creating a WhatsApp chat for all of the sitting members of this group so that if you feel like after September we do want to meet at a different time, or you have someone who would like to come in and present and you want to communicate that to us just so that everybody's getting the same information, we will get that up and running. So the next meeting, the proposed time is September 14th at 10:30. Our homework is to look at these databases for ourselves and look at some of the other databases and some of the other states. We will not ask you to submit anything, but we will give you that as homework. And if there are problems with some of those databases, we look forward to hearing that as well. Is there anything else that you'd like to add, Representative Jensen, before I close this out?
No, I don't think so. That was a very good summary. That's exactly the same notes I have.
Again, I apologize for being in and out today. I apologize again for that. But the other thing I would say is that there's a lot of testimony put in on this bill. And I think we should go back and take a look at that testimony. Both sides, I think, offered some important, and I imagine OLR will end up doing that. But also the thinking of CES, but it's not CES, but the Council on Environmental Quality, CEQ, thank you. CEQ actually wrote a report about this, which I thought was balanced and open. We can certainly get that. And I know some folks that I've been working with here have been reaching out to other states, talking about trying to see how they've done with regard to that. So we're happy to follow up with this group and offer some perspectives from other states who've actually done this, have gone through the process, and may be able to offer us some sort of better mousetraps. So we'll work on that and get back to you guys.
Thank you very much. Okay, with that, I'll adjourn our working group for now. Until next time. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for joining us online. Thank you for your patience today as we navigate technical issues and avoid hearing an echo for 2 hours. So thank you all. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you all.